On June 17, 2019, Marvel Entertainment's Twitter posted a picture of a web that formed the number 4 with the caption #MarvelComics. Fans were ecstatic, intrigued, and pumped to see what this post would lead to. Could this be a comic or novel adaptation of Sam Raimi's cancelled Spider-Man 4? Could this be the beginning of a long-awaited story people have been begging to be told? Well, it turns out that this tweet was a countdown, which was simultaneously disappointing but also incredibly exciting. 4, 3, 2, 1. The curtains lifted, the sirens sang, the crowds chanted, and wait, what?
Hi, I'm JJ.
And I'm Henry.
Henry's very nervous.
I am so nervous right now.
Here's the thing. We have written a Spider-Man comic book.
Yeah, so it turns out the countdown was all for this Spider-Man comic written by notable Star Wars director J.J. Abrams and his son Henry Abrams. What a wild PR campaign that was. It soured fans' opinions even before the comic came out. But I mean, if all this attention was toward what is going to be one of the most interesting Spider-Man comics of the decade, I think it'd be worth it. I like it when good comics by famous celebrities bring mainstream attention to the media. But unfortunately, the comic that would come out from this marketing mess would be one of the more negatively received Spider-Man comics in the past few years. Written by J.J. Abrams and his son Henry with art by Miles Morales co-creator Sarah Pichelli and colorist Dave Stewart, 5 issues of the alternate universe story Spider-Man Bloodlines would come out in the span of 14 months. Compared to the modern Spider-Man classics like Spider-Man Life Story by Chip Zdarsky and Mark Bagley, Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man by Tom Taylor and Juan Cabal, and Superior Spider-Man by Dan Slott and Humberto Ramos, Spider-Man Bloodlines has barely been talked about, and whenever it has been mentioned, its mixed reputation is what is often mentioned alongside it. So, what went wrong? What is the comic even about? Okay, so here's the basic plot of the story, which is set in an alternate timeline. Peter Parker is pummeled and beat up by whatever happened that day, and as Mary Jane comes to assist him, he gets confronted by this villain named Cadaverous who says, "Help us, Spider-Man, we need you." He gets absolutely destroyed by this villain's minions, and Mary Jane gets killed in the process, leaving their son without a mom. We then zoom 12 years into the future with our main character being Peter Parker's son Ben, who's this rough, lonely, and misunderstood teen neglected by his dad for some reason. And at the end of the first issue, he finds out that he has powers and that his father was Spider-Man back in the day. Ben then uses the suit and joins his friend in vandalizing a corrupt company's building, and he gets caught by the police and the media. Cadaverous, the villain from the beginning who quote-unquote needs Spider-Man for some reason, finds out about this, goes to the Parker residence, and then stabs Peter in the chest. Peter and Ben barely talk in this miniseries. All they do is fight. And then Peter gets impaled in the beginning of the 3rd issue. As a reader, I don't feel anything because the relationship never ever has a sweet moment, and we witnessed what seems to be 2 deaths in the span of 3 issues. The reason Cadaverous is after Spidey is because of his blood, which can regenerate people and bring them back from the dead. We then see an older Riri Williams assist Ben. We encounter an elderly Tony Stark who's a drunk couch potato who's not likable to me. We see zombie Avengers come back from the dead because of Peter's blood, and there's a whole battle, but in the end, through events that I won't elaborate on further, Peter dies and Mary Jane comes back from the dead. Spider-Man Bloodlines is a comic that throws a lot of ideas around, but none of them are ever executed in a deep or interesting way, because the comic just moves too quickly. There's not much interaction between characters to make you care about them, and even when dialogue does appear, it's always something that feels mechanically placed to forward the plot. I wouldn't say this is the worst comic I've ever read, and I do see some young teens and new comic fans enjoying this, but compared to the greatest Spider-Man comics of the past decade, heck, even just comparing it to comics that feature Spider-Man with a family, Spider-Man Bloodlines pales in comparison. But it's not the only celebrity-involved comic that has had a very mixed reputation. Over the past 2 decades, especially in the past few years with the rise of comic book adaptations across film and TV, we've seen a lot of famous celebrities across many different fields of entertainment try to get into the comics industry. And more often than not, the comics that come out of this movement are duds that have very mixed critical reception. But of course, not all of them are bad. Actor Keanu Reeves teamed up with writer Matt Kindt and artist Ron Garney to create the successful Berserker, a comic with minimal story but explosive action that centers on an immortal warrior who looks like Reeves himself. Joss Whedon, who most notably created Buffy the Vampire Slayer and directed the first 2 Avengers films, worked with artist John Cassaday on the mainline X-Men series from 2004 to 2008, and it was actually really well done. It starts out with the reveal that a cure for the mutant gene exists, and we see everyone dramatically react to this historical event that can change society. It has pacing that keeps you hooked, memorable one-liners, and the spicy internal drama that makes the X-Men so special. Director and notable comic book fan Kevin Smith doesn't have the best track record in comics, but has shown his talent in writing during his time on Green Arrow and Daredevil. And I have heard nothing but absolutely amazing things about Riddler actor Paul Dano's miniseries Riddler Year 1, which is surprising considering he has no prior experience making a comic before. But unfortunately, most of us have very mixed experiences with most comic books made by people outside of the industry. Let's talk about some of them, shall we? My first purchase on Comixology was the first 3 volumes of American author and political writer Ta-Nehisi Coates' series on Black Panther, with art by Brian Stelfreeze. I really tried getting into it because I paid for it, but it was too dense for my tastes. It was filled to the brim with philosophical commentary on politics and being a leader, which I appreciated, but they made the comics so slow for me and a lot of others. I can see why some love it, and I'm glad if you enjoyed it, but it didn't really work for me. The 4-issue limited series, Cage, by none other than Samurai Jack and Primal creator Genndy Tartakovsky, also had quite the mixed reception among fans. I personally found its colorful and over-the-top presentation to be brimming with life and personality, but the comic's lack of a solid story put off quite a lot of fans who bought this book monthly, because each issue of the series can be read in like 2 minutes. Issue 2 specifically has 7 pages of Luke Cage in a trance, which is cool, but made people feel like they were scammed. I read it on Marvel Unlimited though, and I found it pretty fun for what it was. Walter Mosley, an author regarded as one of the greatest crime fiction writers, made one of the weirdest stories on the Thing I have ever read in my life, with so many villains popping out of nowhere and so many twists that you end up feeling numb to it by the end. Lights, a musician whose discography I mostly adore, made an ambitious move by making her 2017 album Skin and Earth revolve around a comic she made all by herself, which is pretty impressive and admirable to be honest. This emo, post-apocalyptic tale with themes of classism and environmentalism was decent considering she had never officially made a comic before, but it's not a tale I really cared for as it suddenly shifted to become a supernatural tale halfway through the book, which was kind of jarring for me. I know this is the biggest hot take ever, but I also didn't really enjoy N.K. Jemisin's Far Sector. Everybody seems to love that comic. And so I was disappointed when I found the latter half of the comic to be quite a slog to get through, as I didn't really feel any stakes for what was going on. There are even more comics by celebrities that have pretty mixed reviews. Actress Emilia Clarke's comic Mother of Madness, Chef Anthony Bourdain's Hungry Ghosts, and filmmaker George Romero's Empire of the Dead all have pretty middling to notorious reputations among fans. Now, I'm not trying to be a hater here. There are interesting concepts and ideas in a good chunk of these comics. And I can tell the creators are passionate and poured their heart out when making them. I don't think I could do any better. I think it's cool when famous people use their time and effort to create a comic in order to fulfill themselves creatively, even though it's probably not gonna be monetarily successful. But I think most of us can agree that when someone outside of comics works on their own comic, the quality is more inconsistent than usual. But I think that's okay, actually. When talented people who are skilled in other creative fields have difficulty creating great comics, I think it makes us appreciate and respect the art of comic writing more. To me, it's a reminder that writing comics is a legitimate, respectable, and challenging task compared to other media like movies, television, video games, music, and books. Comics are usually seen as a lesser art form. Comic writing isn't viewed as a very challenging thing by most people, but in reality, it is not an easy task. It requires an understanding and appreciation of a completely different art form that has its own quirks and complexities. Just because you're good at writing novels or film scripts, it doesn't immediately make you a great comic writer. Of course, some are going to be good at it because they are just innately gifted, but just like most skills, it usually requires time, effort, and practice to be great at. In conclusion, comics by celebrities are often creative, weird, and inconsistent in quality, and these comics give us an avenue to respect the many talented comic writers and storytellers in the field who've created masterpieces that mean the world to many using a very underrated skill set. My name is Joshua C, and I will see you in the next one.